Welcome to our spring vegetable gardening seminar. My name's Joey and I have to start with a funny story. Over 25 years ago, I was eating dinner with my wife Kim and her grandparents over in Seminole Heights, and we had meatloaf for dinner. I'm a polite young man, so I asked Grandpa Kirby if I could pass him the meatloaf for seconds, and he looked at me right in the eye and he said, "Joey, I am a vegetable eater." I have no idea how I responded, but his words always stuck with me. He was a vegetable eater and he was a vegetable gardener. He loved it when plants did something for him, like produce food. So here we are at the perfect time of year for getting a vegetable garden started. So come on with me, let's learn how to do it. So the first thing to remember is that in any gardening endeavor, there's lots of trial and error. It's not going to be perfect the first time, and that's okay. We're here to get you to be as successful as possible. But the thing to remember is that gardeners don't grow plants. Gardeners create the conditions for plants to thrive. And so we're not going to learn that much about plants today. They grow on their own. We're going to learn all about the right conditions to make sure you have a thriving vegetable garden. So let's talk about location. We've got to find the right spot in your yard to grow vegetables. And you can probably guess what they like a lot of. That's sunlight. They will not do well in a shady area. I'm so sorry if you have a shady yard. It may not be right for a vegetable garden. In Florida, we define full sun as at least 6 hours of good direct sunlight. Vegetables could take it all day long, but you want it to be at least 6 hours. So make sure that the spot you choose has plenty of bright, direct sunlight. We also want to choose an area that isn't too soggy. We get lots of rain in Florida as we come into our summer season. We want to make sure that it drains well. So never pick a spot that sits wet or soggy for extended periods of time. And then pick a spot that's convenient. Somewhere that you can harvest easily, that you can scout, which is go out and check on your plants occasionally, and of course we've got to water them. I'm going to lecture you on that more. We want to make sure that we can water them easily, so make sure that a water source is easily available in your location. Soil is so important for vegetables. In this seminar, we are talking about planting vegetables in the ground or in raised beds, so we're going to talk about the dirt. It's where all of the nutrients, the minerals, the vitamins that everybody talks about as the healthy part of vegetables come from, so we want it to be really rich. My favorite mix is 50% Kirby's planting soil, 50% topsoil, and then a little top dressing of some black cow for some added richness. Our Kirby's planting soil has active microbes, so it's rich, it's alive, it gives the plants what they need to grow and to thrive. And then we add some topsoil for density because we ask those plants to grow so quickly. We want to make sure they have something to really root into. With your soil mix, if you're doing a new garden, of course you'll use all fresh soil. If it's an existing garden, you may just need to replace a little bit, but you do always want to recharge those nutrients a little bit with some fresh soil. The soil from last year is going to be depleted a little bit. Always make sure that you turn your soil a couple of weeks before planting day to make sure everything sets and comes together well. With the soil prepared, some of the hard work is done now, and we get to do what is probably one of the most fun things, second only to harvesting, and that's planting our garden. So now is when we get to dream about cabbages bigger than our heads and buckets full of tomatoes. So as you're planting your garden, make sure that you plan for enough to have useful harvests. A tomato plant or two may actually provide quite a few tomatoes, especially if you do a cherry tomato variety. But if you're planting lettuce, 1 or 2 plants is probably not going to produce a lot of salad. Second, make sure that you pick vegetables that your family likes. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but just because your neighbor said something grows, don't use that vegetable. Only use stuff that you've got a plan for. Pick some of your best recipes and plant those vegetables in your garden. And as I said at the beginning, there's a little bit of trial and error in our garden, but we don't want everything to be an experiment. So go with some stuff that's tried and true. I like to use the 80-20 rule. 80% stuff that I know works well, and 20% new experiments. If there's some success, maybe those experiments move into my tried and true category. If you're brand new at vegetable gardening, you can always ask at your garden center or a neighbor or a friend that's a gardener to see what has worked really well for them. There's an advantage to seeds. I like to use them when I need heirloom or organic varieties that you can't always find as vegetable starts, and when I'm planting a lot of something. If I'm planting a row of lettuce or arugula, it makes a lot more sense to use a seed packet than to try to start with veggie starts. So if you're starting with seeds, the most important thing to remember is plant them at the correct depth. Each seed packet will tell you how deep to plant the seed, and follow that. because it's really important. Rule of thumb, small seeds go shallow, large seeds will go a little bit deeper, but always follow the package instructions to make sure that they grow properly. For some of my larger plants like tomatoes or peppers where I don't need a whole pack's worth, I'll often start with already sprouted plants to get a little head start on my garden. We're going to plant them a lot like we do our landscape plants. Dig a tiny little hole, of course they're just real small, and we're going to plant them level with the existing ground. We don't want them to be buried under too deep, nice and level. So you've spent an exciting day planting your garden. Now we've got to make a plan to take care of it. This is where creating the conditions for these plants to thrive becomes really critical. The first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is watering. Water is critical for plants just as it is for people. And we want to make sure our plants are getting enough of it and getting it consistently enough that they grow well. So we want to start with this rule of thumb. Water daily for the first month, always in the morning. Every other day for the second month, and about twice a week for the third month. That's our general set of watering instructions really for all plants, but it applies to our vegetable gardens as well. As the veggies grow, watch them. They'll tell you if they need more water. Are they wilting or are their leaves dropping? That may be a sign that you need to increase the water a little bit. As we move into the heat of summer, you also want to watch to see if they don't need a little bit more water. But start with that basic schedule and figure out what your garden is looking for from you. There's two ways that you can add fertilizer to your garden that we like to use. The first is to do a monthly granular. You can use something like our Kirby's fertilizer, that's our custom blended Kirby's special, or an organic option is Garden Tone by Espoma. Both of those work really well. You'll apply those once a month, following the instructions to figure out how much to put on each plant. And the second way to fertilize is to use a liquid fertilizer. This acts a little bit more quickly. You can replace one of your waterings each week with a hose end sprayer and use the liquid fertilizer. It absorbs really quickly into the plants, really greens them up. Our favorite is by Fox Farm and it's called Grow Big, and it really produces nice green color to your vegetables and gets them growing really well. So once your seeds have sprouted and your veggies are starting to grow, some folks ask, can I mulch my beds? And the answer is absolutely. It's not necessary, but a little bit of mulch over the top of the garden beds will help to retain moisture and to reduce weeds. With the basics covered, now we have to keep on watching our garden. And there's a routine that I make a part of my gardening that I really like. I get my favorite hot beverage, and once a week, I walk my garden. It's really peaceful, I get to enjoy what I've planted, and I get to check my plants for pests and disease. It's called scouting, and it's an important part of veggie gardening. It's another aspect of creating those conditions for our plants to really grow well. We want to catch problems early. They're easy to treat then. So a couple of things to look for on our plants are going to be holes in the leaves, chew marks or twisted leaves. You see any of that, it might be a sign of a bug issue. If you see black spots, brown spots, a silvery color on the leaves, that may be a sign of a disease issue. And it's Florida, so we do have issues that crop up from time to time. But don't worry, we can treat them, especially if you find them early. Our go-to treatment for disease and insect issues is going to be neem oil. Mix it up in a sprayer, and we'll spray in the evening, once a week or so, depending on how bad the problem is that we find. And if you want to treat a little bit more in a little stronger way, but you still want to keep it organic and natural, we'll go with Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. And that's sure to treat those pests that are in your vegetable garden. If you're growing anything in the squash family, cucumbers, watermelons, zucchinis, any of those types of plants, they need bees for pollination. Those big flowers are just too large for wind to move pollen from one flower to another. So we rely on bees. So we can always add some beautiful flowers to our vegetable garden to bring those bees in. And a couple of my favorites are here with me right now, including one little bee that kind of landed with us. I've got a salvia, a heather, and some marigolds. 3 companion plants that are wonderful for a vegetable garden. They make it beautiful, and they'll bring some bees to help pollinate those veggies. Well, that's it. Some of our best tips for helping you create the right conditions to make you amazing vegetable gardeners. And don't miss our Q&A video where we're going to answer some of your specific questions to help your gardens keep on growing. Happy gardening!